Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 53 of the Memorial Memo, KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. Glad to be back here in my normal setup in Lexington with the mic and the hopefully better sounding audio for you people out there. I enjoyed my time at home. You know, it's always good to be able to get back to your roots, be able to wind down, be able to relax a little bit. But, you know, we got SEC play obviously in full swing. Right in the middle of course, school just started back up for me, so trying to traverse that and KSR as well. So that's been fun, but a bit of a personal note for myself, which is not really important, but I guess this is my podcast, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. Been trying to eat better, been trying to exercise, been trying to do those things. Let me tell you, for a fat guy, that's not always easy. You know. Right now, I got my water, got my Dasani right here. I usually have water with me for the podcast anyways, but been trying to limit the sodies. Let's see, what's been the big adjustment? Of course, the calorie intake. Trying to work in fruits, veggies when I can. You know, instead of grabbing, I don't know, a candy bar or something as a snack, been eating on cantaloupe, right? So it's been an adjustment, right? I know really none of you all care about that, but like I said, this is my podcast. Feel like talking about it, so there we go. Haven't hopped on the scale yet. I literally just started this whole thing this week, so we'll see how that progress goes. You know, if you're a super loyal fan of the podcast, I'm sure, if you've been around since the beginning, I'm sure you've seen me get fatter and fatter pretty much every episode. So we're trying to hit the reverse on that, go back down on the scale just a little bit regardless. Let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the episode. Starting with Kentucky's ranking in the AP poll, Kentucky is the number 7 team in the country. They had worked their way up to number 6, but they have since fallen back down to number 7 after going on the road and losing to then unranked, now number 121, Alabama. And Kentucky, I feel like they should have stayed at 6 after beating then number 5, Oklahoma, now number 13, Oklahoma at home. But, I understand there's a lot that goes into the AP poll. There's a lot that goes into, trying to rank, trying to figure things out. It just kind of sucks that feels like when a team loses, I think there's this, I don't want to say agenda, but there's this idea from a lot of people that, okay, well, this team lost. They have to fall in the AP poll, right? And I would say that's generally a good rule to have. Also, if you're watching this and you see this blue duct tape on the top of this, like this blue tape on the top of my headphones, I don't know what happened. I just kind of started falling apart, and I was like, all right, we got to try to hold these bad boys together. So there we go. But, back to the AP poll, right? I thought Kentucky should have stayed at number 6. They're at number 7. UConn's number 1, South Carolina 2. Texas lost this week. That's the big game. And LSU, after beating Texas, jumped Kentucky to take that number 6 spot. Okay, now I understand it was a very big win for LSU, and I would say, that's one of the best wins in the country this season. Actually, I think Texas probably has the 2 best wins, beating UCLA and South Carolina on neutral courts, right? But, of course, those were back in November. And, LSU gets Texas at home. They beat them. So I'm pretty sure they played twice this season. I think that's who they each have to play twice. So that'll be fun to watch just as a neutral observer in a way. But I don't love LSU hopping Kentucky, especially after Kentucky just beat LSU on the road a little bit over a week ago, basically 2 weeks ago now. Like, I think head-to-head is important. I think it should be one of the more important metrics in terms of evaluation. But, like Maryland beat Kentucky. I would have Kentucky over Maryland right now because that game was on a neutral court in November, right? Same reason South Carolina and UCLA are above Texas right now is because that was in a neutral court in November, right? So, I don't know. The rankings, they don't matter a ton right now, obviously, especially the AP, right? The net and that bracketology, those things matter a little. I mean, bracketology is just a projection, but it gives you an idea. But it just felt silly. Kentucky moving down to 7 to me, but I can't be mad after the loss. So, I guess it is what it is. Moving on to the net, Kentucky still number 8 in the country, still looking good there. I'm pretty much convinced at this point the net's just going to be stuck how it is because LSU lost 2 games in a row and they're stuck at number 5. I know they beat Texas, but they've just been at 5 pretty much the whole year. Kentucky been stuck between 7 and 8 for pretty much the whole season as well. You go look at the top 10 of the net rankings. Of course, you have UConn number 1, understandably so. UCLA number 2, South Carolina 3, Texas, LSU, Michigan, and Michigan State, which Michigan State, they haven't played anyone. I don't remember if I said this last week or not. Well, I said they haven't played anyone. They are 3-0 in Quad 1. But 10 of those 16 wins are in Quad 4. Okay? So part of me is still very skeptical about the Spartans, but regardless, they're 16-1. They are 3-0 in Quad 1, to be fair. So I guess I get it a little bit. TCU 9, Vandy number 10. But, net rankings, they're interesting. You go look at the quad records for Kentucky. With this past week, Kentucky is now 4-2 in Quad 1. Of course, only losses there are to Maryland and Alabama. Is what it is up there, right? 4-2. Kentucky is actually tied for 3rd in the country in Quad 1 wins. I believe UCLA has 7, UConn has 5, and Kentucky and a few other teams are tied there for Quad 1 wins. And, of course, they've played in Quad 2, and then they're still 4-0 in Quad 3 and 8-0 in Quad 4. Go look at the ESPN Brackettology. When we recorded last week, Kentucky was a 2 seed in the Brackettology. So you see this graphic on the screen, or if you hear me saying it right now on podcast, Kentucky's a 2 seed. But in the middle of the week last week, they actually slipped down to a 3 and hopped back up to a 2. We take a look at this graphic over here, and you kind of see where here in the seed projection history, you see that little red dot. Well, that's where Kentucky moved down to a 3 after losing to Alabama, but after beating Oklahoma, they're back up to a 2. So you look at that projected field right there with North Carolina as the 7 seed. Rhode Island is a pretty scary 10 seed. They got votes in the AP poll this week. They're a really good mid-major, surprisingly, I think. And then EKU down there at the 15 seed. But I would, this is obviously projected, and this is obviously going to change. But it's one of those things where we just look at the bracket, and I look across the other, the other venues, the other teams or whatnot, and Kentucky has a very favorable bracket right here. The number 1 is South Carolina, right? Your number 1 is always going to be a really good team. The 3 is Maryland, who you lost to, but I think you could play really well against. Number 4 seed is undefeated Texas Tech, but there's people who are skeptical about them because they're strength schedule too. So Kentucky, a 2 seed in the latest bracketology. Now, we got to talk about it. I really don't want to, but Kentucky goes on the road. First game with Tiani Key out. And when I say that, I mean not this season, but first game of this stretch where, she hurts her elbow. She's going to be out for a little while. Kentucky goes on the road and loses at Alabama. And to start that game, Kentucky was playing pretty well. They led 11-2. And, you're sitting there thinking, okay, Kentucky's the better team here. They're going to Alabama, that place. I think the crowd was better than it typically is, but that's not the greatest women's basketball venue in the world. But when that place gets rocking, it is a pretty good place in general. I don't think they had a gigantic crowd for that game, though. But you sit and look at Kentucky and what happened in that game. Well, you shoot 17 of 54 from the field, 7 of 22 from 3. That's 31 and 32%. But more importantly, Clara Strack had her worst game maybe ever, right? I say that. 13 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals. Okay, congrats. You did she did everything else, but she went 1 of 13. Her and Toni Morgan were combined 5 of 26 from the field. And so you're never going to win like that. And I was really worried, are we just going to be bad without Tiani Key? Is Kentucky just not going to be very good without her? But then I was shut up pretty quickly, but we'll get to that in a second because first, I want to give a quick shout to our friends over at Roback. Change the game with Roback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear. From polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta performance pants, you will look good and feel good with Roback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at roback.com. So, you sit and look at the schedule, and after that Alabama loss, you're thinking, oh boy, are we going to be any good, right? And then Kentucky goes and beats number 5 Oklahoma. And as Captain Kirk says here in the chat, I was at the Oklahoma game, and I thought the officials were going to get Strack and Morgan killed, not calling anything most of the game. That was the story 90% of the game. I told you all, and we've said this, where Reagan Beers, she became public enemy number 1 in historic Memorial Coliseum. It was actually insane to, well, first of all, I remember posting online, I was like, someone please clip this, and I didn't get it tweeted at me, but I got like a couple DMs from people who had like screenshots and a couple clips where it's just Reagan Beers is trying to get positioning down low. I don't think anybody's mad at that, but she's literally pushing people. And like when I say that, I mean literally 2 hands pushing people around, Clara Strack specifically around to try to get positioning. Amelia Hassett got a bit of it too, but like Clara Strack at times, man, she got beat up. And Toni Morgan, she really got beat up. I mean, that whole game, half the game, Toni Morgan played all 40 minutes. She spent 20 of them, I feel like, on the damn floor, playing basketball. And, I posted the final score graphic, and the graphic is literally Toni Morgan laying on the floor because I thought that was very symbolic of the game. I just felt like that was how this Oklahoma women's basketball game just went. But, yeah, the Reagan Beers show put on pause as Kentucky gets the 63-57 win. And let me tell you, this is a really big win, okay? First of all, after not being wrong about a prediction all season long, I went 0 for 2 this week. Okay, so it's not great for me. But for the team, when you look at this team, right, because I thought Kentucky would lose this game kind of fairly handily. I think I said 79-64. Like I had a 15-point game when I predicted this game last week, and I just didn't see it. I didn't see the possibility of Kentucky bouncing back after Alabama and then winning this game against a more talented team, best rebounding team in the country, and I didn't even realize this part, but fastest pace of play in the country, gets up and down the floor like crazy. I just couldn't see a world where Kentucky would come out and win this game, right? Even though it was at home. And then Kentucky did the thing. They got down by double digits, and of course at that point, I'm sitting there thinking, well, this one's over. Like, we can't do this again, right? But then they come back, and all of a sudden it's tied 34 at the half. And now I'm sitting there thinking, well, we were down by 12 at LSU, came back and won that game. Now we were down by 13 against Oklahoma, came back and we're tied at the half. We're in a ball game again. Are we going to do this? Like, is this going to happen? And you get to that third quarter, and it kind of just felt like something flipped, right? It just felt like something, flipped in favor of Kentucky. I can't even pinpoint as to what that would even be. The crowd got really into it. I can tell you, with every foul Reagan Beers had, right? She finished the game with 4 fouls. Unfortunately, did not foul out. That would have been a fun scene in Memorial. But every foul she had, like Kenny, the bench, Memorial, everyone, like elated, just joyous because she gets away with all this pushing and shoving. Yeah, Matt G in the chat saying, not sure if they win that game if they don't get smacked by Alabama. I think that's fair too. I think it's fair to say, maybe Kentucky needed to get not tested because they got beat, right? Like you needed Kentucky this kind of, you needed something to get exposed, and you needed to be able to look at the tape after that Alabama game and say, oh, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. We got to change this up because, you know, you lose to Alabama, but guys, they're 17-1 right now, I think. I think it's 17-1. It could be 18-1 at this point, but I think it's 17-1. Like, they're really good. They're number 21. They're going to keep going up the rankings. Alabama's a really, really good team. And losing that game on the road in the fashion you did without one of your best players, yeah, it sucks, but you know what? It's not going to kill your season. I think I said that after the game. And Matt G, maybe you're right. Maybe it ended up getting Kentucky the win in that game. But I want to just look at some of the stats, right? Because Kentucky didn't play perfect. They shot 34% from the field, 19% from three. Got out-rebounded, but not by a large margin at all, 45-41. But first of all, before I even look at stats, let's talk about Jordan Obi for a second, right? And I guess to go into the stats a little bit, she had 11 points, 6 rebounds, but those 6 rebounds, she had 4 offensive rebounds, and I could have sworn all 4 of them came at the end of the game, but it was only 2 of them. Clara Strack had an offensive rebound in that stretch as well. But Kentucky got the ball with 2:10 to play in the game, up by, I think it was 5 at the time. Up by 5, 2:10 left in the game, or maybe it was even up by 4. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, make a shot here, extend the lead, right? But Kentucky instead, first of all, they miss like every shot they take. But Clara Strack and Jordan Obi get these offensive rebounds, offensive rebound after offensive rebound. And then Oklahoma doesn't touch the ball again until there's a minute and 2 seconds. Go from 2:10 to a minute and 2 seconds where Kentucky has the ball, and that really kind of ices the game. Leah Chavez comes down, kind of forces a shot. She's super talented. I saw this take on Twitter. She's super talented, but you can tell she's a bit of a raw talent. Still got to figure that out. I think for her, it's a matter of when do I shoot the ball, when do I pass the ball, right? I know they're paying her a lot of money to shoot the basketball, but at the same time, I don't want to say she shot Oklahoma out of the game, but you know, she went 7 of 23. She had 18 points, but 7 of 23. Like, you know, she was the number 1 recruit in the country, but at the same time, you know, she's just got to improve, right? But back to Kentucky, Jordan Obi played incredibly well, obviously, with those stats. And then you look at someone like Clara Strack, who we talked about getting beat up by Reagan Beers the whole game. 18 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. And by the way, this is a perfect time for me to make the case that it was absolutely ridiculous that Clara Strack was preseason second-team All-SEC behind Reagan Beers. Reagan Beers finished the game with, as soon as I can find it, 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 fouls, 4 turnovers. She had 3 blocks as well. I'll give her credit for that. But Clara Strack completely outplayed her and was getting pushed around the entire game. How in the world was Clara Strack voted second-team All-SEC behind her? Right? Reagan's incredible, and I'm not saying she shouldn't be All-SEC at all, but how is Clara Strack behind her? Right? 18 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. How was Clara Strack behind Reagan Beers? You know, in the preseason, we thought that. On KS Board, there's a whole second-team joke about, you know, why in the world is this happening? But it's not even really a joke. The only joke here is that Reagan Beers was above Clara Strack in the first place. And Clara Strack, shout out to you, goes out and proves it that she's better than Reagan Beers, right? Like, and it doesn't take her trying to get you in a boxing match to prove it. So I thought she played tremendously well. Tony Morgan, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Kentucky only had 9 assists on the day. And if you would have told me that before the game, probably would have thought Kentucky would have lost pretty big too. But only 3 players in double figures for the Cats. Again, that's what's so fun and damning and interesting and kind of scary about this game all at the same time, is that Kentucky didn't even play incredible basketball, right? I think on defense they actually did. Let me take that back. Defensively, they played out of their minds, I thought. Holding Oklahoma to 57 points, I think that's an incredible job. But offensively, like Kentucky, they didn't bring a big punch. They only scored 63, 3 players in double figures. And Tony Morgan had 22, Claire Strack had 18. Like, they combined for the vast majority of Kentucky's points. Right? There's a world where, they come out and play like they did at Alabama and you get rocked. But that didn't happen. Kentucky somehow pulls it together, somehow gets the win. And to me, that is such an encouraging sign for the future. That is such an encouraging sign for, okay, I don't know how long Tiana Key is going to be out, and I hope hope she gets back sooner rather than later. But, if Tiani's out for a few weeks, maybe even pushing over a month or so, maybe even longer, I'm not sitting here thinking, oh no, what's going to happen the rest of the season? Like, after you beat a team like Oklahoma, that makes me think, okay, Kentucky still got the chops to go out and beat a really good team like the Sooners. Now, as fun as the Oklahoma game was, we got to move on. We got to talk about 2 more basketball games coming up. You get that win. Kentucky, I think, needs to go 2-0 this week. I think you need to beat Florida and Mississippi State. But we start with the Florida Gators, who, when you look at them, they're all right, not really great. 12-7, 0-4 in the SEC on the year. They have lost 5 of their last 6. They're just not playing their best basketball right now. When you go look at Florida's schedule, they actually lost first to Navy in the non-con and then Tulsa. So Florida has some bad losses on their resume. And last season, I was actually there on the road. Kentucky beat Florida 71-55. Looking at some of Florida's key players, got Liv McGill. She is a tremendous player, should be all SEC. She is like their shining star. 23.4 points per game, 5.5 assists per game, 3.2 steals per game. You got a guard. Now, I say guard, Miara O'Neal. First of all, that is Shaquille O'Neal's daughter. I'm going to go back to this graphic. Player here on the far right, that's Shaq's daughter playing for the Florida Gators. Okay? She is 6'4", listed as a guard. Is she a guard? I don't think so. But she's listed as a guard, so I put down guard. But that is Shaquille O'Neal's daughter playing for the Florida Gators, averaging 13.4 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks per game. Another guard in Layla Reynolds, averaging 12.6 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.8 steals per game. And then you see a forward here, Nidi Yaich. Of course, I did this from Mississippi State too. Had to look up some name pronunciations ahead of this. Hadn't watched a ton of Florida and Mississippi State, admittedly, before today. People call her Needy, and that's a lot easier to say than what's listed on the screen. 6.1 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, and is one of their better three-point shooters, averaging 36.8% from deep. Look at Florida, and like you saw the record, right? They're not great. They haven't won an SEC game. I would say this is a can't-lose type of game because Florida's just not playing very well. Matt G asked if someone, if there was a men's team who listed everyone as a guard this year. Pretty sure that was Vandy. I think Vandy listed, I think it was point guard. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure Vandy, Mark Byington, called every single one of his players a guard. And I think it was point guard, actually. On the women's side, you actually have Fairfield, who Kentucky could have played last year in the NCAA tournament. Their posts are called Roadrunners. So that's another neat little thing about them. Oh, what was the Morehead State had one this year? I think all of their players are listed as shooters. I think that's what it was. Kentucky's first game of the season. They didn't play point guards, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. I think everyone on Morehead State's roster was listed as a shooter, if I remember that right. But, Kentucky's the better team here. Like I said, Kentucky hasn't lost to a Navy or a Tulsa. Kentucky is 3-1 in the SEC, not 0-4. Simple math there. So I got Kentucky winning this one 75-58 at home, and I think Claire Strack's the MVP. They lost Rashea Kyle to Miami. She's doing really well for them. Of course, Kentucky played Miami earlier this season. And, she's 6'6". She can really bang around down low. She's, again, I think a really great college big. And Florida loses that. Now, they do have Liv McGill, but I think Kentucky's backcourt is good enough and athletic enough to kind of keep up with her and not really let her completely change the game. I don't think she's going to come out and hang 40 on Kentucky's head or nothing like that. So I've got the Cats winning that one 75-58 at home. And then Kentucky goes on the road and plays Mississippi State. Excuse me real quick. Quick water break. Take on Mississippi State on the road. You look at them, and similarly to Florida, not having the greatest season. They actually started off pretty hot, but they're currently 14-4, 1-3 in the SEC. You have, again, similarly to Florida, they've lost 3 straight games, and then last season Kentucky beat them 91-69 at home. That was actually a game in which I believe it was Deja Lawrence and Georgia Amore who combined for like 15 threes and like 40 points or like 50 points. Like those two went absolutely off. That was the SEC opener last season. Got a comment here. Captain Kirk, again, saying Moorhead had more Swedish players than players from Kentucky or even America. And I don't remember if it was Sweden specifically, but they did have a lot of international players on their team. I do remember that. Go look at some of Mississippi State's key players as well. Freshman forward Madison Francis, 13.1 points per game, 7.4 rebounds per game, and 3.1 blocks per game. Favor Wadozie, 13.1 points, 10.2 rebounds, and 1.7 assists per game. Destiny McFall, 12.1 points, 3.8 assists, 2.5 rebounds per game. And Chandler Prater, who we saw last season, 10.1 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. You look at this Mississippi State team, and my immediate thought is they just went and played Ole Miss and got absolutely rocked. And Ole Miss is a good team. I think Kentucky's better. Look, it's like I said, this is a week where I think Kentucky needs to go 2-0. This is a week where, you can lose one of these games, and I think it would kind of hurt a lot, actually. But these are losable games. Every game in the SEC is going to be a losable game. I don't care if you play Arkansas, right? And Arkansas is not very good. It's a losable game. Like I said, all of these games are going to be losable. But I think Kentucky gets the win. I'm actually going to say 80-57. And I'm going to say Amelia Hassett's my MVP because we need Amelia Hassett to be the MVP. We need her to come out and have a really good game. But, again, this is just one of those games where you need to come out and play strong. You need to come out and do – I feel like this week, it's not a get-by-it kind of week, but it's a just come out and execute, come out and do your thing, and move on and get the wins. So, bit of a shorter episode this week. Didn't want to spend here too long, just kind of yapping about nothing, right? Wanted to get through what we needed to get through. It's an exciting time, though. 16-2, 3-1 in the SEC. And I actually didn't know this, but for the first time in program history, Kentucky has 2 top 5 wins in a season. And it was actually, because they have the 2 top 5s this year, Kentucky had 2 combined in the last 10 years. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was really awesome. Justin in the chat asking, where do you predict this Kentucky team to make it in the tournament seed-wise? This is a really good question because, Kentucky could somehow, you look at the schedule, they could lose a couple of games, especially in February, and they're a 2 seed right now. But, at what point, if they keep losing, can they fall out of hosting? And I guess my point is just saying no, right? I don't think Kentucky is – I think Kentucky – they're not a lock to host, but Kentucky's playing such good basketball right now. I think they will host. I think they will be there. Whether it's a 2 or a 3, I don't know, right? It's going to be a matter of a coin flip, but Obviously, you hope for the higher seed, hope for the better matchup and path, but I do have Kentucky hosting pretty firmly in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. I would say either a 2 or a 3. If I have to guess, I'll probably lean at 3 just because I expect them to drop a couple games before the tournament. So, yeah. Like I said, we're getting out of here. It's been episode 53 of the Memorial Memo. If you've enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe. Please do all those wonderful things for us. I appreciate it. Steven appreciates it. We all appreciate it here at KSR. We're at 57.4K subscribers. Let's get that number up to 60K and then so on. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of the Memorial Memo. I really appreciate it. As always, thank you all so much. Go Cats. We'll see you next time. Peace out.